Sex for gigs. The predicament of a gig plug. I started writing this piece shortly after a lengthy talk with some digital marketing gurus that I met at a public gathering. As our conversation grew, the nosy budding writer in me could not hold his tongue tight that I eventually asked, is it true that gig plugs ask for sex in exchange for gigs? How does one even start to ask? After a few seconds of total silence, one of them said, "Man, I do not know," before the other added, "I have only read about those things online." The notion that gig plugs ask for sex before giving out a gig is one that's been talked much about in recent times. Like some unscrupulous employers, often said to be male, who seek to exploit women and young girls with the promise of employment or before they actually employ them, is uncouth tactic that gig plugs have been accused of borrowing to further the sexual fantasy ambitions, and or even more. To ascertain myself with the facts of the matter, I even once sat to listen in on a Twitter space that was examining the topic with the goal of exposing the culprits and also empower female influencers who have claimed to be the key victims to come out more. The space talk went on and on for hours without a single name exposed. Maybe I missed the actual part where they exposed some, or maybe none was eventually mentioned, but at least they held the talks. In my labored attempts to try and dig deeper on this issue, I reached out to a reasonable number of female influencers seeking to find out whether they or a friend of theirs had ever been at the receiving end of such advances. I did also inquire whether an acquaintance, a fellow influencer in their circles, had ever experienced such behavior, but the answer was a resounding no, with a few noting concisely that I also just read them on the timeline, but have never experienced it. The few male influencers I spoke to equally had no attestation to these allegations. Like me, they've only read about them on the Twitter timeline. Although these sex for a gig claims have been thrown around the timeline, I have not seen any evidence to that effect. Whether it's out of self-preservation or fear of judgment, that the ladies have not come out to bring that evidence and have it scrutinized by the timeline detectives and those they accuse of this uncouth practice, I'm not yet sure why. Because he or she who alleges must prove, says the law. So I'm told. Nonetheless, this does not disrepute the claims because a lack of evidence is not evidence of absence. My humble prayer is that if there is any gig plug with such behavior in any manner whatsoever, they should stop it immediately not to taint the image of digital marketers. On the other hand, it also begs the million-dollar question, which one of the guys posed to us all. When is a gig plug allowed to explore his love possibilities? It's only humanly natural to see a person and like or feel attracted to them instantly, and perhaps, in some rare cases, fall in love with them instantaneously. In other words, love at first sight, he argued. So if a gig plug invites an influencer for contract talks or formalities of work, are they not supposed to ask them out on a date? Because let's face it, it can largely be interpreted the same way if you give someone a contract and then ask them out. It could as well mean that you gave them the contract so you can ask them out. And if you ask them out before awarding that contract, then it means you're making it a disguised precondition before you give them the contract. At the end of our exchange about this particular matter, there was an unspoken consensus of it's complicated. Hi, everyone. This is Robert K. Circles. Thank you so much for tuning into the podcast today. I really appreciate you taking the time to listen. I hope you enjoyed this story. If you did, I'd be incredibly grateful if you could take a moment to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any future episodes. Give us a like on your favorite podcast platform. Leave a comment letting us know what you thought. We love hearing your feedback. And if you know someone who might enjoy the show, please share it with them. Your support means the world to me and helps us reach more listeners. Thanks again for being a part of the Robert K. Circles community. Until next time, take care.